Hello there, listeners. Welcome back to Life in Motion. I'm your host, Grace Becker. I'm a licensed mental health therapist and an enthusiast of life. And I am so excited to have you all back for another episode. I was just, how I usually start these episodes, and I usually talk a little bit about what's been going on with me, and then we kind of get into the content. Well, what's been going on with me also kind of was my inspiration for today's episode. So I have been spending the last few days, packing up my stuff and decluttering. Not too much packing quite yet, but a lot of decluttering, because at the end of June, I'm going to be moving out of where I currently live, and I'm going to be moving in with my man, Jaden. So I'm really excited about that. Jaden and I were talking the other day just about moving and packing up and everything. And because I'm type A like this, and I like a plan for things, I made a doc list, like a Google Doc for him and I. Okay. Truthfully, mostly for me, but I did include him in it just if he wanted to also use my template. But I made a template where, like, 3 months out, there's things for us to be doing to prepare for our move at the end of June, right? So 3 months out, I think I had it like make a packing list and also declutter your stuff. Things that you don't use anymore, that you don't need, that you don't want to bring to the next place. And then I had like 2 months out, start gathering like boxes and packing supplies, start packing things that you don't really need, like Christmas decor, other random decor, kitchen stuff you don't really use on the daily sort of thing. Then I had 1 month out stuff to do. Then I had 1 to 2 weeks out, a day of after you move in sort of situation. Just to kind of, sort to be able to like space out the moving process so we don't have to panic pack everything, which is what I did last time I moved. Definitely don't recommend it. But Jaden was like, oh, I just need a weekend and I'm good. Well, you know what? Good for you. Not this girl. I am too much of an overthinker. That is an anxious girlie's worst nightmare. So don't recommend. So I like that process, but we also have some other exciting stuff going on. Jane and I are going to Europe this summer, so we've been doing some planning for that. I have been having some other like content creation ideas for my personal social media. I was thinking of maybe documenting my moving and packing journey, documenting our journey in Europe. I just think it'd be something cool to create, not only for other people to follow along, but for Jaden and I to be able to look back and like see the process, So I think that would be fun. But, with all the talk of all this, packing, moving, planning trips, and like content creation, it really got me thinking about, oh my gosh, Grace, like, when's the last time you just stopped and took a breath? When was the last time you relaxed and rest your weary soul? Because it really got me thinking about, this concept of wasted time, or more so the fear of wasted time. Because I know I sometimes can procrastinate, or I'll get in my head about something when I'm trying to relax. And I have that anxious feeling of like, I just need to be doing something. I need to be productive. Right. So like today, as I'm recording this, it's like a few weeks before this one is going to be released, but it's a Sunday, right? I usually record on Sundays. And I was so tired. I was like, I really want to just take a nap. And I'm like, oh, but I really have to record these episodes. And I thought, no, you know what? Like, it's okay, girl. Like, rest is important. It is valuable. We will get to it. We will get to the recording after, right? And who knows, like maybe my podcast episode could have suffered if I didn't take the nap. But it just really got me thinking about this. We as humans put so much pressure on ourselves to always be productive, right? And if we're not being productive, we get this anxiety about wasting our time. And it just got me thinking, and I wanted to talk about this concept and kind of challenge it as well. Is it really wasted time, or is rest just as valuable? So that's what we're going to be diving into today, is that concept of wasted time. So kind of just starting out with this topic, what even is wasted time, right? So let's define it. So generally speaking, when people are talking about, oh, that was such a waste of time, or just wasted time in general, they typically are implying that the time that they are spending or have spent on something was not used efficiently or effectively, and that the outcome was not beneficial or meaningful to them. And this concept of wasted time is subjective and can depend on that person's individual priorities and their goals. So, for example, like someone who has a family, right? Maybe they have kids. To them, wasted time is maybe, I don't know, they wasted their, air quotes if you can't see me, they wasted, air quote, their weekend, because rather than cleaning their house and preparing food for the following week, they were taking rest and they were ordering food out and all these other things, right? Because they could have been spending their time preparing for the week ahead, right? For their family, or they could have been doing outdoor activities or doing something with their family, right? So they might consider that wasted time. Versus another person's experience and perspective of wasted time might be, oh, I wasted my weekend by not working on like that one work project, right? Like I had some time, I could have done it this weekend and been prepared for the week ahead. So just it's really subjective for that person. But this wasted time aspect could look different for a lot of people, right? It could also include things like spending excessive time on social media. I know that's kind of when I feel that I'm procrastinating, right? So say I'll like, oh, I should really work on this podcast episode, or I should be cleaning my apartment. Again, there's that should that we talked about in many episodes where it's placing that judgment on myself that then leads to me feeling guilty and shameful because I'm like, oh, I'm wasting my time. I'm procrastinating. I'm strolling on social media. It could also look like engaging in leisure activities, right? Like I was talking about my nap earlier, or doing something fun for me, like going to a coffee shop, right? And getting my coffee and reading a book versus, oh, I could be out connecting with friends rather than just taking that time for myself. Really, it's just anything that may not align with a person's goals or values. Because if a person has a goal in life and they're not consistently doing things that will help them reach that goal, that can sometimes lead to this feeling and this anxiety of wasted time. So if you've ever kind of struggled with this concept as well, that is what I want to dive into. I want to dive more into how us as humans can find the balance between productivity and rest. Because is rest not beneficial? Is it not meaningful? Is it not worth our time as well, right? So it's not necessarily a waste. And if you have struggled with any of these kind of rhetorical questions, then I'll tell you right now that this will be a good episode to tune into and to share with the people in your life. Now let's get into some internal dialogue, because for many people, many of us, I'm included in this, who struggle with this concept of wasted time, tend to have an internal dialogue going on and may question ourselves as far as to judge ourselves by saying things like, am I doing enough? What if I'm falling behind? I should be doing that instead. Or I shouldn't have wasted my time like that. Kind of that internal dialogue of should, shouldn't, what if. That's going to create a lot of self-judgment for yourself, which is going to lead to the anxiety and some of the guilt and some of the shame that develops into this idea that we are wasting our time. And also recognizing that this isn't something that the individual solely puts on ourselves alone. Society definitely also has an impact on this. And I'm mostly going to be speaking from a Western culture point of view, as, I live and I work in the US, and most of when I've talked about this concept with other people, other of my colleagues, clients, people in my personal life, it's generally coming from our own perspective, as do most things in our lives. So I'm going to be speaking from that side of things. There is definitely an influence on culture, right? So if you were to take this perspective from maybe in European areas of the world, they might view this concept of wasted time differently, right? So they might think that, oh, leisure time is important and it should be planned out. It should be incorporated and is not something that you should be made to feel guilty about, right? So just like know that as we talk about this, I'm going to be talking about it mostly through that, Western perspective. And something that I was thinking about when I was thinking about this societal conditioning is that a lot of us have been conditioned to this hustle culture. And hustle culture, in simple terms, is the idea that you always have to be working, you always have to be grinding, you always have to be doing something productive to be considered successful or to be considered valuable. So AKA work and hustle equals purpose and accomplishment. However, that can be very detrimental to a person's mental health and health in general. So how this mindset might look in a person's life, this hustle culture, is when people say or kind of project these types of things. 1, sleep is for the weak. Or if you're not working 24/7, someone else is getting ahead of you. Or rest equals that you're lazy, right? So those are some of the things that this type of mindset can show up. Like that's how it can show up in a person. It really glorifies being consistently busy, and it can make a person feel guilty for slowing down even when they need rest, right? Like people need rest. Think about if you have a very, intense workout. Usually once you're done working out, your body needs that rest, whether you can acknowledge it yourself and you're like, okay, time to take a break in between my set, or you just got done on a run or playing pickleball or something. And you're like, okay, no, my body needs rest. And you can understand that yourself and go take that time to rest. If you don't do that, your body will make you. And that's when it can be very detrimental to a person's health. But a lot of the times when we get into this, we don't give ourselves the rest that we need. And it's tying your self-worth to how much you achieve, right? And when you build your self-worth on what you achieve, it can leave a large gray area for disappointment, which can then lead to low self-esteem. Another aspect of this is the glorification of being busy. So in our culture, busyness is often equated with importance, with success, and with worth. We wear our full calendars like a badge of honor, as if the more we do, the more valuable we become. But what happens when we start to confuse being busy with being productive, right? Like there's a very big difference between consistently being busy and using your time that you do have productively so that you also have that time for resting. We fall into this trap of thinking that every moment has to be filled with work or achievement to matter. But busyness doesn't always equal progress, right? Sometimes it's just noise. It's easy to feel like we're doing something important, but often we're just distracting ourselves from the things that really matter, like taking care of our mental health, taking care of our physical health, connecting with other people, and simply just enjoying life. I'm sure many of you have heard this message in one way or another that we only get this one life. So why not spend some of that time in our life doing the things we enjoy? Take this, for example, right? So let's assume that a person's lifespan is about 79 years, and that person works for about 45 years worth of that time, right? So roughly ages 20 to 65, right? Because most people tend to retire around 65. There's 24 hours in a day, right? So you spend roughly 8 hours of those 24 hours sleeping, and you spend roughly like 8.5 of those hours on the weekdays working. Some people work on the weekends. Some people have more than one job. So that's roughly going to be about 45 hours working. And for personal time, like things like eating, commuting, hobbies, socializing, all of that can estimate to roughly about like 55% of a person's life, right? So in summary, the average person spends about 26 years sleeping, about 11 years working. Again, that's very dependent because this is coming from like that 20 to 65 frame, and about 42 years worth of just all the other random stuff that you have to do in your life. So we we really have a limited amount of time on this earth to be spending it towards the things that make us happy. And when we spend that time consistently getting on ourselves for, air quotes again, not being productive, of course that's going to affect us. And it's going to make our time here on this earth less enjoyable because we're in this consistent state of anxiety. So being consistently busy can make us forget that rest and stillness are essential parts for growth. The truth is, rest doesn't take away, right? It doesn't take away value from us. It actually adds to it. We recharge, we reflect, and we come back stronger, right? Like I was talking about my nap earlier. I needed a nap before I started recording this because I was exhausted. And because I took that nap, I actually feel much more well rested. My mind feels, well, now it's struggling, it's buffering, but it feels like I'm not so exhausted. I feel like I'm able to process and explain. My mind feels more clear than it did when I was feeling more groggy and sleepy. So I came back stronger, right? It can really help us. It can also provide more clarity. It can provide creativity. But when we glorify things like busyness, we risk losing sight of all of that. We increase our risk of being present and, being with other people and connecting with others, right? We risk all of that when we don't take the time to just rest and reconnect. We also, in this society, we also measure a lot of our worth by the output that we give, right? So by our output. Measuring our worth by how productive we are is a toxic cycle. When we tie our value to our output, we set ourselves up for burnout and self-doubt. Productivity is just one part of life, not the whole picture. Our worth doesn't decrease when we rest or take a break. It grows when we honor our needs, right? When we nurture our mental health, when we embrace our fullness of who we are beyond what we do. True value comes within, not from a to-do list. This also can lead into some perfectionism for sure. Perfectionism and fear of failure feed into this idea of wasted time as well. Perfectionism and the fear of failure play a huge role, and they do that by putting this pressure to be consistently productive on ourselves and the anxiety around wasted time. Perfectionists often set impossibly high standards for themselves, believing that anything less than flawless is a failure, right? They have to be perfect. And this mindset makes productivity feel like a consistent high-stakes race. If you aren't always achieving or doing something at your best, like possible self that you can, you might feel like you're falling short, right? And humans are not perfect. We are not perfect by any means, especially across all sorts of areas. And if you were to say that you are perfect, I'm sorry to tell you, but that's wrong, right? There's always ways to grow for sure. And there's ways to improve. And recognizing that in there is that gray area of, you know what? Gray area, but also it's kind of nice. It kind of takes off some of the pressure when you're able to recognize, you know what? I'm not perfect, and that's okay. Because then that allows you to make mistakes because you're human. And this cycle of perfectionism, this vicious cycle, it can often lead to you pushing yourself to be productive nonstop, to prove your worth to other people and to yourself. And yet you never feel like it's enough, right? That's kind of the idea of perfectionism. It's like you're consistently striving and striving and striving to be perfect, and it never feels like enough. And you can do it to yourself. Sometimes other people put those like ideals onto you as well. But even rest can feel like a failure sometimes for people who have this perfectionist mindset, because if you're not doing something to get you closer to that perfect ideal, then you're wasting your time, right? And this fear of failure magnifies this cycle by making every moment of inactivity seem like a lost opportunity to succeed. You start to believe that if you're not working hard or producing results, that you're failing in some way. And this fear drives you to overwork or to push yourself past your limits which then leads to feelings of inadequacy, leads to burnout, leads to low self-esteem, and the consistent anxiety of potentially not measuring up to meet certain expectations makes it really difficult to embrace downtime, to embrace that rest that you need, right? Because people are so terrified that it will set them back, when really perfectionism and the fear of failure keeps us trapped in a mindset that only when we are consistently producing that we are worthy, right? That is the toxic cycle. When true growth really happens when we break free from those pressures, right? And give ourselves permission to rest without guilt. And there's a lot that goes into this, right? I feel like I could just do segments of this topic alone. But kind of something else that goes with this is the emotional toll of never feeling like you've done enough either. So when someone consistently feels like they haven't done enough, it creates this emotional weight that becomes harder to bear over time. It's like being trapped in a cycle of self-criticism where no matter how much you accomplish, you never feel truly satisfied. And this often stems from a deeper belief that your value is directly tied to how much you produce or achieve, right? We talked about that earlier. But here's the reality, everybody. The reality is that the belief isn't your own. It's something you learned. Majority of the time, it is something that's learned, maybe from a family member, maybe from a teacher or a culture that celebrated only doing over being. Why can't we just simply exist and have that be a great thing, right? Rather than always having to do something. People certainly need a purpose. Everybody, I think, craves that. Something that makes their time on this earth really exciting, right? We spend a lot of our times in our life, a lot of time in our life working, right? So we spend a majority of that working. So it would make sense that you would want that time to be something meaningful to you, right? Something that gives you a sense of purpose. So I'm not saying that it's not good to have goals or good to have values to strive for and to use your time for. I'm just saying that there is a line of when that can become toxic and that's all you use your time for. And you get on yourself and you judge yourself when you do need the rest that you take, right? So if you grew up in an environment where rest wasn't prioritized or where the message was there needs to be more that needs to get done, it can create an overwhelming sense of guilt when you take a break. You might have heard phrases like idle hands are the devil's workshop or wasted time is never regained. Well, these messages form a belief over time that not working is inherently wrong, right? That if you're not working hard, then you're doing something wrong. And I really do believe this is something that is becoming more understood in our culture, especially as different generations come into the picture and are able to say, you know what, it's okay to take a rest day. So I am happy to see that. I think there is that change coming. There's still a lot of work to be done. And all of this goes to say this emotional toll that it is heavily influenced by your environment and the way you grew up as well, right? So think about that. Take some time to reflect on that. Have you ever grown up in a home like where that was the message? Do you work in an environment where they consistently expect you to produce, that they never can understand, you know what, to be human is to make a mistake? Think about it. So kind of going into this, right, so we have this issue of always feeling like we're wasting our time. How do we flip that narrative, right? How do we change, rest from being this imperfect thing to it actually has a lot of value, right? How is stillness actually necessary for clarity, creativity, and connection? Well, it's time to challenge those beliefs of rest is a luxury or a sign of laziness. If that's how you view it, then it's time to challenge those beliefs. Because what if, instead of seeing rest as wasted time, we start viewing it as essential for our overall well-being and success? What if rest not only was wasted, but necessary for our growth, creativity, and inner peace, right? So part of it is just flipping the narrative, right? Just changing your mindset from rest is a waste of our time to actually rest is necessary to be able to grow in order to be productive, in order to be creative, in order to be, calm and to find that peace. It is very valuable. And the first step in flipping the narrative is recognizing that our worth does not hinge on our productivity. It does not. It is natural, like I said, to want to accomplish things, but our value is not determined by how busy we are. The truth is that productivity without pause can actually lead to burnout, stagnation, and exhaustion. Rest, on the other hand, is like a reset button, right? It restores energy, it fosters new ideas, and it allows our minds to rejuvenate. So in a world that consistently demands our attention, stillness offers something very valuable, and that's clarity. When we're always doing, it's easy to become overwhelmed with distractions and lose sight of what really matters. It's only in stillness when we can give ourselves the space to reflect, to process, and to make sense of the chaos, right? At the end of every episode, I always say, find the beauty, embrace the chaos, right? Because there is beauty in the chaos. And the way we can make sense of that is by giving ourselves that time to rest and that time to reflect and to process. Our minds are most often clear when we stop rather than trying to do. When I'm working with clients and I'm teaching them some skills, one of the skills I really like to teach is a DBT skill called STOP. It's an acronym that stands for, S stands for stop, just stop, don't react, don't do anything. T stands for take a step back, right? Either mentally take a step back or physically take a step back. Do some deep breathing, do some grounding exercises. O is to observe, kind of reflect, okay, what's the situation? What happened? What am I thinking? What am I feeling? Who else is involved, if there is anybody? What might they think of this situation? What do I need? And then the last step, P, is to proceed mindfully. And I always tell people that arguably one of the hardest parts in that step, in that process, is the first step. And that is to just stop, to not react, to not do anything. Because most people are hardwired to just do, to just react, right? But there's some truth in it that just stopping, not reacting, and following through with those steps of taking a step back, observing, and then proceeding mindfully is going to produce much better and more productive outcomes. So just simply stopping, not doing, and just allowing ourselves to be is very, very helpful in trying to break this idea of wasted time. And another way to think of it is that when you take a break, you give your brain the opportunity to sort through all the information that it's taken in as well. Most people need that time to kind of just reflect, like I was saying, and process, what's all coming in. And this is when breakthrough happens for a lot of people. When answers arise and when you can see your life or goals from a new perspective, kind of what we were saying earlier of that stillness is where you kind of find that clarity, right? And it's just going to lead to a lot more productivity for people and gives you, therefore, more time for rest. This creativity doesn't always come from consistent hustle. In fact, it often springs from those moments of downtime. And the best ideas aren't born from overpacked schedules, right? If you think about artists, if you think about, like Einstein or whoever, right? All these people, they had those moments of rest. They had those moments. They certainly had setbacks as well. But that's where their creativity could flourish, right? Is when they kind of stopped, stepped back, observed what was going on, and then decided to proceed mindfully with their next best course of action, right? You don't get very far by burning yourself out and doing, right? It's just not a good idea. Lastly, the stillness is a gateway to connection, right? We talked about this idea of that when you take time to rest, it's also an opportunity to connect. Well, it's not just with ourselves, but with other people as well. So in a world where we're always running from one thing to the next, we can forget that true connection with people can happen with all around us, right? Taking time to rest, to pause, and to be present allows us to show up fully for those that we care about and to make new connections. It's in those quiet, unhurried moments that we're able to fully listen to people and to make authentic connections and strengthen our relationships. It's kind of disingenuous. People can tell when you're in a rush or when you're just trying to meet a goal, if you know what I mean, right? Like you ever have that conversation with someone and it's like they seem like they're in a rush, or they're kind of beating around the bush to get to what they really want to know, right? This kind of happens in work environments a lot as well, or like talking in like an educational as well. I remember being in grad school and talking to professors or talking to people in my cohort, and it's just, okay, oh, how are you doing today? Oh, I'm doing good, da, 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 right? You just kind of miss an opportunity for connection, and just to get to the point, right? To get to, okay, now let's bring it back around to the thing that I want to get to. There was an opportunity there to just stop, rest, take a moment, right? And to build a true connection, right? It doesn't have to be a lengthy thing. It can, right? You can have that intimate moment where you reach out to somebody and you go do something that is the rest that you need. And that's another thing that, could be talked about as well, is rest doesn't always mean scrolling on TikTok, scrolling on social media, napping. It certainly can if that's what your body needs, if that's what your mind needs. But sometimes rest is connecting with another person or connecting with yourself, journaling, coloring. Sometimes it is cleaning. Sometimes that can be restful for people. It is just as much as productivity is subjective for people, so is rest. It is something that you just have to ask yourself, what do I need right now? What would be most beneficial for me in this moment? And when we give ourselves permission to rest, we also give ourselves the opportunity to connect with others and ourselves on a deeper level. Stillness cultivates mindfulness, and mindfulness helps us appreciate the present moment, fostering a sense of peace and empathy, right? And that is so important. It is so important not only to have that for others, but to have it for ourselves. And some may call it selfish. Really, it's not. Really, it's selfless if you think about it, because if you're able to recognize that you need something for yourself, you're just filling your cup to later then pour into another person or into a project or to something else, right? It is selfless, not selfish. So thinking about other ways you can implement this into your life, I really wanted some, I don't know if tangible is the right way, but I wanted stuff that you could take from this episode today and start to implement into your life and practice like today, starting today if you wanted, right? And this is admittedly initially uncomfortable, but is also very needed, right? So kind of going with this, just like I don't know if a warning's right, but just kind of a precursor is do this in small steps. If you struggle with any of what I've talked about so far today, if you struggle with perfectionism, if you struggle to allow yourself to just rest and to find that peace and that stillness, do it in slow increments, right? Maybe don't jump to taking a whole day of just doing whatever you want. Just take an hour to start, and then take 2 hours, and then take half a day, right? Mix it up with what you do with this rest time. But here are some different things that you could try to do. So I have 10 different things that you can do and some like a tip to go with it. So take what works for you, leave the rest. The first one is to schedule rest time, just like how you would maybe a meeting or a date night, right? So the tip with this, treat rest as an important appointment. Block out time in your calendar for breaks, for naps, for relaxation activities. And again, you can define what that means for you. But do it just like how you would like a work meeting or a date night, right? Commit to your rest time with the same level of seriousness that you would a meeting, right? So you most likely wouldn't want to miss a work meeting, right? You would treat it like a serious thing, as it is. I'm encouraging you to also, when you schedule this rest time, to treat that as you would that same meeting, right? And schedule it out. Like I said, you could start with an hour, you could start with 2 hours, whatever makes sense for you. You could even schedule it like a study break, right? Say I'm going to study for an hour and then I'm going to take a 30-minute break. Schedule it out. Set a timer if you need to. Okay, the second one, practice mindful pauses throughout the day. So tip for this, set an alarm or reminder every 2 to 3 hours to stop what you're doing for 1 to 3 minutes roughly. Take that time, that 1 to 3 minutes, close your eyes, take a few deep breaths, stretch, or simply just check in with yourself, right? What am I feeling? How am I doing? This is something that I do. I don't need to set an alarm because my work is kind of my alarm. I meet with clients every hour on the hour, but I usually have roughly 5 to 10 minutes in between sessions to take a minute or two to just stop, take a deep breath, maybe do a little bit of box breathing, and just ask myself, okay, what am I thinking? What am I feeling? Sometimes if it's been a more, stressful or intense session, I will especially try to be mindful in doing this because that's usually what's helpful for me to be able to compartmentalize, okay, that session, that was for that session. Now it's time to change my mindset and alter it for my next appointment, right? Because you really do have to be, when you're a therapist, especially, you have to try to compartmentalize and understand, okay, that was for this person. This is a completely different situation I'm going to walk into. What do I need? What kind of rest do I need? What do I need for myself to be able to do that? And for me, I usually need a couple of minutes to just close my eyes, take a few deep breaths, stretch out whatever parts of my body are feeling tense, and just check in with myself. So that was number 2. Number 3 is to embrace the power of doing nothing. You can do nothing. So dedicate a specific block of time each week, even if it's just 15 minutes, to do absolutely fucking nothing. Sit and stare at a goddamn wall for all I care. But for real, you can just sit quietly, or you could take a walk outside, or just let your mind wander without any sort of agenda. Just sit there and just stare out into fucking space and just exist. Just exist for 15 minutes. But block it out, right? Like schedule it out. Kind of the first tip that I gave of scheduling rest time like you would a meeting. For this one, you can do that every day. You could do it once a week, whatever makes the most sense for you. Just take some time to do nothing. I give you permission. Do it. If you have kids, do it. If you have a family, do it. If you are single, do it. If you are a busy college student, if you are working in corporate, if you are like blue collar, working like physical jobs all the time, take one of those 15-minute breaks and just do fucking nothing. And what I mean by doing nothing does not mean scroll social media. That does not mean go on your phone. It does not mean watch TV. I really do mean just lay there and just let your mind wander, or walk and just let your mind wander. Sometimes creativity can inspire from that moment of rest and stillness. Okay. Number 4 is to reframe wasted time to time well spent. Whenever you feel guilt creeping in during those moments of rest, reframe it by reminding yourself. And I encourage you to actually say this out loud, because it impacts a person differently versus if you were to just think it in your head. But I want you to reframe it by reminding yourself that downtime is crucial for recharging and for clarity. You could even write it down, write like a mantra if you want to. Some people will create kind of, I don't know if anyone has ever seen movies where they've done this, where they'll have something that they'll say. Okay, I don't want to trigger anybody, as I did just recently do an episode on religious trauma, but have you ever heard some people say, like, what is it? It's like, Hail Mary, full of grace, or something like that. I don't remember what it is. I'm not Catholic, so I don't remember, but I've seen it in movies where they're like praise Mary, full of grace, or something like that. And they'll usually like kind of repeat it. It's a mantra for them because it brings them like clarity and, just kind of helps them to calm. You could set up a mantra for yourself. You could do something like, rest is not wasted time. It's an investment of my well-being. Simple as that. Rest is not a waste of time. It's an investment in my well-being. Which is another good way of reframing it, right? Don't view it as a waste of time. It's an investment in yourself. And if you're going to invest in anything, yourself is one of the best things to invest in. Number 5. 5 is to set boundaries with work and screen time. Oh, I don't know if anybody was going to expect that one because I am talking a lot about the importance of rest. Doesn't mean that I am saying, oh yeah, like I'm giving you permission to spend your entire work week, just scroll social media, watch TV. Rest is important, right? That's not what I'm saying. There is a difference between rest and taking the moment, that time to fuel yourself, and spending all your time not being productive, not using your time in a way where you can both give yourself and your body and your mind what you need, and use part of that time to also be productive to reach those goals and to uplift those values, because we do have goals, right? It is 2025. We've got goals up in this bitch. So create boundaries. And I say with work, but this could be with anything, right? It could be with people, it could be with yourself. Create boundaries by designating specific times for work and for leisure. So, for example, avoid checking emails when you clock out. This is something that I had to do too. Like I had to take my work email off my phone because I would find myself going on it when I was not at work. Okay. Girl, Grace, what are you doing? You are not at work. So set boundaries with yourself and with work and with leisure. You could also try a digital detox when it comes to things like social media or screen time. So some people have gone so far as to just kind of delete social media, but you don't have to do that either. You could just set a screen limit if you want to as well. I personally struggle with self-control. So I might say, oh, okay, I'm going to go on TikTok for 10 minutes. That's all I'm going to give myself. And then before I know it, oh my God, it's been 30 minutes. And I'm like, what the fuck? So I have to set a timer, and I have an iPhone. I don't know if you can do this with like a Samsung or an Android. I'm sure you could. But in my settings, I have to go and set a screen time limit. So my app will immediately kind of lock down as soon as I'm done with 15 minutes in a day or something. So you could do that. You could also just, set on do not disturb and say, okay, after 7 p.m., after 8 p.m., I'm not going to go on my phone for anything other than important calls or texts that I might receive, and just put it on do not disturb. Or you can even adjust, you could create like a personal one where you could still get certain people who are allowed to send you calls or text messages, but no other apps or anything. Or you could even just do it only phone calls and messages in general can go through, but no apps could send you notifications. That might be good too. Some food for thought. Number 6, you could also reflect on what brings you joy and prioritize it, right? So spend a few minutes each week reflecting on activities that truly bring you joy and fulfillment, whether it's something like reading, gardening, cooking, or a creative hobby like crafts or coloring. Schedule those activities into your calendar, no matter how small they may seem to you, because if it brings you joy, girl, you better prioritize it. If you don't, who will? Nobody's going to come and do it for you. Number 7, develop a gratitude practice. So you could do at the end of each day or at the start of each day, end of each week, whatever you prefer. You could write down 3 things you're grateful for. This could include moments of stillness you had, achievements you made, or just simple pleasure of the rest that you gave yourself that day. Number 8, experiment with unstructured time. So every week, try to schedule a block of unstructured time with no plans or goals, right? Let yourself be spontaneous, whether it's going for a walk without a destination, picking up a book without a specific, genre in mind, or I don't know, a specific chapter to finish, or just simply daydreaming, right? This kind of goes back to what I was saying earlier of just give yourself time to just exist. But this is a little different, right? Because before I was saying just stare at a wall or go for a walk and just let your mind wander. For this, I'm saying you could start with a walk, but allow yourself to go in whatever destination. Or it could be get in your car and just start driving, and maybe you're like, oh, that's a store I've never been into. Let me go into that and go into it. And then maybe you meet someone and then you start talking with them and they tell you about this brand new coffee shop that's down the road. And you're like, oh shit, I'm going to go check it out. And then you go do that, right? It's kind of nice to do this. I've never done this, but I kind of want to start. I think once a week would be a little bit much for me for that. I think I could totally see myself making this a thing maybe once a month. I think that's realistic for me. That would be really cool just to kind of start out with something and just see where it takes you. And that sounds fun. And it sounds like it would be nice and restful. I would kind of just get to make up things as I go for what my body, my mind needs in that moment. So that sounds nice. Okay, number 9. Y'all, I cannot not have a therapy podcast and not talk about journaling. So number 9 is to start a rest journal or just any journal in general. So keep a journal to track your rest, to track your moments of stillness. You could write down things like, oh, this is how I was feeling. I was feeling really stressed and overwhelmed because of this like work thing. And then you could write down how you felt after you took a rest, right? So say you take like 10 minutes during your workday to just rest, and then you can journal in it later and be like, oh, like I took 10 minutes. I just took a lap outside or in the office, and then I came back and I started to feel less anxious. I felt more calm. I felt more like level-headed, and I was able to proceed more mindfully, right? So you could track that, or you could even do like how you could journal with like prompts, right? You could journal this idea of wasted time, right? You could do that and do it from your own perspective and notice maybe some positive effects when you implement some of these tips I'm giving you. That'd be a good idea as well. But yeah, just journaling is really great for people. If you don't like to journal, you could get a therapist and talk about it with them. I can't also not talk about therapy. Because that's great too. Some people just don't like to journal, but they do love to talk, and they'll get a therapist to talk it out with, which is awesome. Awesome. Oh my goodness. Okay. Number 10, my final tip for you is to shift your self-talk around productivity. Productivity has to be one of like the key words of this episode today. But when you're feeling like you haven't done enough, practice compassion by shifting your self-talk, right? Instead of telling yourself things like, I didn't do enough today. Try saying instead, I gave my best today and now I'm going to rest so I can come back tomorrow even stronger, right? Yes. Because what are you going to get other than guilt and shame by putting that type of blame on yourself of, I didn't do enough today? Well, shit, girl, you can't change the clock. You can't turn it back unless you've got a time machine I don't know about. You can't go back and change what you've done, right? All you can do is give yourself some compassion. Be like, you know what? That's maybe not what I preferred. And I gave it my best today. I gave what I could. And now I'm going to go give myself some rest so that tomorrow I can be a bad bitch. Yes, sir. So do that. Shift your self-talk around productivity. So yeah, those are some tips for you. 10 tips to try. If you do try any of these, I would love to know how it went for you. I also really hope that today's episode was helpful for people today. I'm currently feeling like I might need a little bit more rest after this episode, because I can tell my words are starting to get a little tongue-tied because I've been talking so much today. So I'll have to go give myself some rest after this, pat myself on the back. What's that one meme or that one episode? It's like, pat yourself on the back, girl. Whatever that is. I hope people know what I'm talking about. But yeah, so that's what I had for you all today. If you liked what you heard, please leave a review, leave 5 stars, share with people in your life. I would really love to hear your thoughts on this. So if you have like follow-up questions, or if you just want to like be more involved with the podcast, my socials are Instagram at life_in_motion24. My TikTok is life_in_motion24. And my email is life.motion24@gmail.com. Shout out to my editor, Ben. He has been very awesome and this entire process of like changing my equipment and my recording. And he's been helping me out with editing my podcast. So a huge shout out to him. He does a really great job, especially with the YouTube videos. He puts these like cool little like things in it. Like one of my episodes, I had like a Harry Potter quote and he had Dumbledore like shaking and moving when I was speaking. So it's just, he's great. I really appreciate him. I couldn't do this without him. But I upload episodes every Thursday, so definitely stay tuned to hear more about Life in Motion. You can watch this podcast on YouTube, and you can also listen on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. But until next week, embrace the chaos and find the beauty. Bye!